In this Kotlin on Android development tutorial, we're going to show you how you can return data from a fragment back to its calling activity. Welcome to Mobile Application Tutorials. My name's Nigel. Okay, so we have a new tutorial series here on how you can share data between fragments or share data between a fragment and its calling activity. So right here we have the documentation for the website. It's basically free. You just have to sign up and there will be a link in the description. And part of this tutorial is based on another tutorial, so if you click on this link here, the Kotlin video tutorial, it will take you to this page, and it does go into in-depth on how you can create and start a video application using an intent. So we will be using part of that code even though we'll be writing it from scratch. And also this series is continuing on from the Kotlin Fragment series, so if you click up there, there's a comprehensive series on how to create Kotlin fragments and how to switch between those fragments there. So if you're new to Kotlin or new to fragments, this one is well worth checking out. Okay, and so basically we're on episode 1 here. The episode will be released at the completion of the Kotlin Fragment series. There will be announcements and everything for that. So basically this one's going to be on how you can pass or return data from a fragment to its calling activity. And these episodes will be released on a weekly basis. Unless you want to sign up for the professional membership plan, and that gives you access to all the tutorials plus premium content straight away, or else you can actually buy this series for the one-off price for $10 US, which will get you all these episodes straight away, and they'll also include all the premium content from the Kotlin Fragments tutorial series as well. Okay, so we'll make a start. So the first step here is we're going to create an application from scratch. So go into your Android Studio and we're going to start a new Android Studio project. I just need to drag this across. Okay, so the name of this, I'm going to call it Kotlin Fragment Sharing. And as usual, make sure you're including the Kotlin support. We're only going to be doing this in the Kotlin language. Select next. I'm using API 21 Lollipop. It gives me 71.3 of all devices. Continue next. It's going to be an empty activity. And I'll just keep the names as the main activity and select finish. That is now built. So what I want to do first is to go into my layout and select the activity underscore main layout file. And what I just want to do is replace this text view. We're not going to use hello world. We are going to replace that with a frame layout. And I'll make both the height and the width to match content now. And I got that one wrong. So you want to match parents. And we will give this an ID. And I'll just call this the fragment container. This is basically going to be used as a container to house our fragments. So every time we load a fragment from our main activity or potentially from another fragment, it will get directed to this location here, the frame layout, to be displayed here. Okay, that's fine here for the moment. We're going to create a fragment first. So if I go into my package name here, right click, select new, scroll on down to fragment, and we're just going to get part of the fragment created for us. It's built into Android Studio, so we will use that functionality. Okay, and select fragment blank. Just drag this across. Okay, I'm going to call this the video intent fragment. As you can see here, basically it's going to load a video intent. We're going to create an XML layout, and so that's the layout file for where we'll be basically setting up what's displayed on our fragment page. I'm going to include the fragment factory methods because we're going to remove most of them, but we want to keep the initial functionality. And the key point here is include interface callbacks. Yes, because that callback is going to provide us with the connection between the calling activity and our fragment, and also provide a listener. So we'll use all that, we'll just rename them to more appropriate naming. And of course keep the source language as Kotlin and select finish. Okay, now I want to go inside my actual fragment layout file first before I start editing the code here. So we'll select fragment underscore video underscore intent. Okay, we can remove the text view, not going to be using it. And I also want to change my frame layout to a constraint layout. Okay, now select Design tab, and we're going to select a button and drag that sort of in the middle there somewhere. And I'm going to do Command C on a Mac to make a copy of that button. Select the button there and press Command C and Command V. And as you can see here, I've got two buttons. So if I click on button 3, I can just drag that underneath. So I'm just going to have two simple buttons. Let's give them some context. So button 2, I'm going to call record. Oh, this is the ID. So I'm just going to call it, let's just call it record button. And we will have to rechange the text for that. I'm going to select the bottom here just to remove these hundreds of attributes. Right, and so text view here, I'm going to change that. And so I will add a new resource. I'll just drag this across, it keeps going to the other side of my monitor. So the resource name will be, I'm just going to call it record underscore button. And the resource value will be probably just record. Yeah, just record. And select OK. Okay, that's fine for that button. Now let's go down to the next button. The next button I'm just going to call play button for the ID. And again, if we go to the text here, we're going to do the same here and create a new, add a new string value. And this will be play button resource, and we'll just call it play. Select enter. Okay, so both of these buttons should be self-explanatory. I'm just going to select on my constraint layout here, and I am going to select the little wand up there to infer constraints. And there we have some inferred constraints. You do need that for the constraint layout. So let's go back to our texture view there. And basically we've got our two buttons. Okay, now let's move across to the video intent fragment. And we're just going to tidy this up. Okay, I'm just going to remove a lot of this code. One thing to note, inside this video intent fragment, we're not going to be passing any data in from the activity to the fragment, so we can remove most of this code here. I'll remove all these comments. And we're not going to pass any parameters to our new instance, so we can remove those. So what I'm going to do here is just make life a little bit simpler using Kotlin. So it's a video intent fragment, just like that, and I will put a little tag in front, JVM static, just to get that pre-built for us. Okay, and I will add another value here just for our debug tag, and again I will call the video intent fragment, and we're going to reference the qualified name for that. Okay, we'll remove this comment there, and I will remove these comments here. They just give you a little bit of help. I just want to make this code a little bit simpler. Okay, that's been done now. Yeah, I'm not going to redo this implementation here. We're just going to set up our own listener, and I don't need the onCreate here. This is just setting up the parameters, so we can delete that. And we don't need these parameters. That is for when you're passing down from the activity. Let's get this code nice and simpler. Okay, so if we go down to the interface here, this is the interface which allows the line of communication between the fragment and the activity. Okay, so on Fragment Interaction listener, I'm going to call this on Fragment video URL. Okay, so change this slightly. On Fragment video URI listener. So what this is going to do is basically we're going to return the URI to the video, and so on Fragment, I've changed this name as well, video URI, and convenient enough, it does actually take the argument of URI that was already done for us, so we can just leave that as the same and just remove this comment because we've done what it said. We will need to rename this to the new name. And I think I will just keep the listener name to the, or actually I will change it just to make it more Kotlin friendly. So I'll just call this video URI listener. We will need to change that name to on Fragment. And just update our view listener names, to video. Okay, so these should be the only changes we need to make. So at this stage, I just want to talk a little bit about this fragment because we did enable the interface here. So let's talk about this onAttach function here. So this onAttach function basically will check to see if the calling activity is calling us with the implementation of our interface. So basically the activity will have to implement the interface, and onAttach we do a check for that just to see that the activity has implemented. If not, we will throw an exception. And on detach we do set our listener to null. And so here in this section here is where we actually create the definition for our interface, and notice that we do give an argument. So this argument here will be the this method will be the method that will need to be implemented inside the calling activity, but we can just keep that as the same for the moment. And then we create a variable to represent that interface there. So that's where we can call it. Okay, so that's the initial implementation for our fragment. And I'll also remove this comment here. Okay, I'm going to create a couple of values inside our fragment. The first value, I'll make that private. Value will represent the video URI. It will be of the type URI, and I will be setting that as initial as null. And I do need to make that a var instead, because that value is going to change every time we record a new video. We'll pass the address of the video into this URI. And we'll create another value there, and this is going to represent the request code when we call start activity for request to find a video recording app. So what should I call this? I'll just call this the video app request code. And I'm just going to set this an arbitrary number. It can be anything. I'll send that to 1,000. Okay, now I'm going to create a function for where we create our intent to call a video recording application. So I'll just we'll make this private function, and what I'll call the call video app. It's not going to take any parameters, it's not going to return anything, and the first value will be our intent. So I'll call this a video capture intent. We'll create an intent object here. Let's press Alt Enter to get the library for that. Right, so we'll call media store, and it's going to be the one I've got highlighted at the top here, action video capture. Okay, now we do a check here. We call out intent, and then we do a check for basically resolve activity. And so basically we want to see that there is an application on your device that can actually record a video. If not, we're not going to do anything. Okay, so we will need to call the calling activity package manager, and if that's not equal to null, in other words, if it's found something, we can actually call start activity for result without video intent, and we will need to pass through the video request capture code there. Okay, so this function just creates an intent, and this intent has basically the action request. It's looking for an application inside our device that does support this functionality of capturing video. Think of it as a camera application or a video recording application. Now we'll set up the activity result, capture the result of when the video recording app completes. And so basically we can call onActivityResult. I'm going to use a Kotlin when here and do a check on the request code. And I will put an else here in case we don't recognize the request code, and I'll just log an error here. And I'll just put unrecognized request code, and we can just feed in a Kotlin template there for the request code. Okay, now we look for our video app request code. Okay, and it's a good idea to check the result code just to see if the result code was okay. This result code will get called from the video recording application, letting you know if this request was successful or not. So we'll call the result code equals, and it's result underscore okay. And we'll have to press Alt Enter on that. Okay, and if the result's okay, we can just set our video URI from the data. We will have to call the it could be a null value, so we'll have to make a null safety call. Okay, and that should be fine for our onActivityResult. Now, what I want to do is we'll add our listeners to our buttons that we set up in our fragment layout. So I'm going to do that from inside when the activity is actually created. So we do have a callback for that we can use on activity created here. So once the calling activity is created, this gets called, and this is a good place to set up our listeners for our buttons. So we'll do the record button first and set our non-click listener. I'll use the Kotlin implementation there. So when we're recording the button, basically we are calling our call video app. And we'll add a play button on click listener. Right, here is where we're going to call the actual listener function, and this will send the URI of the recorded video back to the calling activity. And so it's a video URI listener we need to call. We call its function on fragment video URI. We are getting a slight warning here, so we do need to make a null safe call. Right, and inside here we'll pass the video URI value. Now it is giving us an error here because it's looking for a URI. We're passing it a nullable supported URI. So let's go down into our onFragment video URI listener and make this a nullable supported type. Okay, so let's go back to the onActivity created. So basically we just set up our button clicks for recording and playback. And finally we are sending our URI back to the calling activity. And that should be all the code that we need to do for our video intent fragment. So let's go into our main activity. And what I want to do here first is to add a function, and I'll call this function replace fragment. So we'll make it private and replace fragment. It's going to take, I'll take the parameter name, and it's going to be a type of fragment. And I will select the next one down for backwards compatibility support. Okay, so what I want to do here is just to create our fragment transaction value first. So I'll just call this fragment transaction equals support fragment manager begin transaction. And so now we can call our fragment transaction, and we can make it replace, that's fine. And now we call the ID of the fragment container along with our fragment parameter. Now what I want to do here, fragment transaction, is add to backstate, and I'll set null as the name for that. And so what this will do is, if you just want to press the back button on your Android device, it will return to the previous fragment, which will be this, the the previous fragment that was started, so we'll just support that. And finally, you do need to commit fragment transaction.commit. So our fragments do need to be committed. Okay, now let's go inside the main activity. We do need to create our fragments. So what is it? Video intent fragment. So we'll call the video intent fragment new instance. So that will create the fragment, then we need to load it into our fragment container, so we can call our replace fragment with the video intent fragment. Okay, that's fine for that. So we are going to be loading our fragment. Our fragment will start up. We'll press the record button, which will start up an application that supports recording. That will complete, and then the basically we'll want to play that. When you press play in the video intent fragment, the URI will be returned to this activity, and to do that we need to implement the interface. So let's press comma. So we'll call it our view intent fragment dot on fragment video URI listener. Okay, now I'm just going to select the main activity, press Alt Enter, and implement the members for that. There's only one method that we created on fragment video URI. Select that, and all I'm going to do at this stage is just display the URI of the captured video. So I'll just do a log for that, but before I can do that, I do need to create a value for our tag. Reference the Java class for that and qualified name. Okay, now go inside your on fragment video URI, and we'll call the log d, pass in the tag name, and then inside the string we can say video URI, get string template for URI. Just before we can run that, we do need to add the reflection library. So we're going to build.gradle just at the bottom there. Now I'm just going to jump across to my website here. So the reflection library is what gives us access to the Java class names, and so we use that for our tag. So I'm just going to select this value here. And I'm just going to paste it at the bottom of the dependency. You will need to resync. Sync's now completed. Now we'll just switch back and let's run this and see if we get the video intent working, a video application running, and see if we can get the URI for the video returned back to the main activity using the interface. So we'll run that. So the application's now started. I'm just going to select the record button. Okay, it's found an application to do the recording, so I'm just going to press record, just record my display here, stop recording, select OK. Now we're back, we'll return back to our video intent fragmentation fragment. I'm just going to select the play button now. Okay, now I want to redirect you down here. I will highlight this here, and as you can see, the main activity video URI, and there's the address of the video that we captured. So we've basically successfully proved that we can return the video URI or send the video URI data from the fragment back to the activity using the interface. And that completes this episode when we demonstrated how you can return data from a fragment to an activity using an interface. And as you saw here, there was a little bit or a fair bit of code we had to set up by setting up the interface and making sure the connection, both activity side and fragment side, was set up using the fragment onAttach, which would check to see if the calling activity actually does implement the fragment interface. So that does conclude this tutorial. All these episodes, if I switch across to my site, all these episodes are available now, or else they are going to be are available now on the website channel on mobapptuts.com. They will be released then at the conclusion of the Android Fragments series that's currently being released. Then these will start to be released. But if you do want them to get hold of these straight away, it's a one-off fee just so you can get these, and you will get the professional additional premium content you get on the professional plan as well for this Fragment series. Anyway, so that concludes this series. If you've got any questions for me, I do redirect them to CodeMentor. That is a paid consultancy portal, so keep that in mind, that if you've got a question, you have to be willing to pay for my time to help you out with your requests, because I do receive thousands of them. So I don't respond to technical questions on YouTube. And I do recommend you check out my handle for Twitter and Facebook as well. That's where I publish all my announcements when I'm releasing new tutorials or whatever other activities related to mobile tuts that I'm working on. Anyway, thank you for taking the time for watching this one. Bye for now.